I'm going to introduce myself here as part of the slides, but I want to just talk about IT stuff. And what's interesting is I just watched the presentation from SC Tech before mine, Jamie DeMint, and Jamie actually hit a lot of the points that I wanted to hit about the different formal education options that are available in cyber and IT. So I'm going to wing it a little bit here. And then rather than focus on some of those details, I'll focus on really what skill sets you can bring or what you may have and help you try to find a best fit for those things. And then I do have one slide at the end about the life, a day in the life of an engineer as well. So let's start with that introduction. That guy on the right, I don't know if you know who he is, but that's me. His name is Alexander Galloway. He was in the same position a lot of you are in, where 17, 18 years old, looking out into the world, a lot of options, not quite sure how to proceed, where to go, and what to do. From my own journey personally, I was about 10 years old and I was playing Street Fighter, which I know is still pretty popular. And I started noticing that as I would throw the fireball, Ken would block, but then I'd try to foot sweep Ken, and then Sagat would throw an uppercut. And I started like seeing, this is actually logic. There's actually some sort of like mathematical thing going on as a part of me playing on this cartridge to continue to blow my age up there. But it got me interested in the logic behind gaming. And I got into computer science, which we'll talk about, specifically because I wanted to be a game developer. And that aspiration has come to fruition, but I've done a lot more since then. Today, I am the lead cybersecurity engineer at the University of South Carolina. And I'll tell you exactly what that means near the final slides. But what I want to talk about, again, I know Jamie touched on a lot of this, so we'll dig in a little differently about the different formal education options that are available to you, and let's see which ones you might be a best fit for. What can you do with a computer science degree in general? And the answer really is engineering. You have web development, which means websites, it means web applications. You may not think about some of your mobile apps as websites, but long before Facebook and Instagram were mobile apps, they were websites. And all that same logic that goes on in the apps happens in the web. So you can do the app development where you're making Android and iPhone apps, or you can be working on the web versions of TikTok and Twitch and whatever else. But that logic to bring media to the people is what computer science can do. I put game development because, again, that was my passion as well. But it allows you to, again, create the logic, create the software that others are going to interact with. And kind of new to the field is AI. Machine learning was coming up over the last 5 years. And in the past 2 years, AI has completely changed the game. But at the end of the day, you've just got machines that are completing logic based on what they're being trained on in the back. So it's a degree that requires a high degree of logic, and that's a good thing. And I put Legos in quotes because you've got a lot of moving parts and pieces, and you get to kind of figure out creatively how you're going to put all of those things together. And if you find that fun, then computer science really can be the way to go. And there's no limit to what it is that you can do. You can innovate and create things we haven't thought of yet. So again, 2 years ago, I did a similar presentation 3 years ago. We weren't thinking about the uses of AI, but now we are. While electric vehicles have technically been around since the early 20th century, only in the Tesla era are we beginning to see how this can change everything, how it can change our infrastructure, how it can change the way we think about transportation as a whole. We're thinking about electric planes and buses now more so than ever. So computer science brings a lot to the table, but I do want to make sure that you know what you have to bring to it if you want to be successful. And it's a heavy math focus, especially if you want to get one of the 4-year bachelor degrees. If you have math skills, it's great. If you don't feel like you have math skills, that's okay too. Just know that that's a challenge you're going to have to overcome. But you're about to graduate, so I feel comfortable telling you that's life. We all have challenges we have to overcome. And if you want something, you're going to have to climb that mountain to go get it. The field is constantly evolving. So when I got my degree in 2009, and again, skull emoji, I know that's diabolically old, but the iPhone had only been out for 1 year. So no one was talking about mobile app development. We certainly weren't talking about cloud. We certainly weren't talking about machine learning. We definitely weren't talking about AI. So even in the 10 to 15 years that I've had the degree, and I've been working in the field, it is constantly changing. As I move into talking about cybersecurity, that threat landscape is evolving at a rate that is difficult to quantify. And it's competitive. This is something that is being used around the world, and you are going to have to want to go get it and be sharp at it, because you're going to be competing with people from every corner of the earth for particular positions. So computer engineering is another formal education option. Some of you may recognize the gentleman there. They call him Tech Jesus, but I believe his name is Steve from Gamer Nexus. You've also got Linus Tech Tips, J2Sense, a lot of these YouTube streamers. The reason I put them in here is because what they do is very interesting to me. They get graphics processing units, GPUs, normally used for gaming on PCs, but also high compute tasks and AI as well. And they test them, and they're really testing the hardware aspects of it down to its thermal loads, the timing on how different RAMs within the hardware interacts. What they're doing is computer engineering. And it's interesting that computer engineering has become something that's a form of entertainment for people. These guys get millions and millions of views every time they post a new video. So computer engineering is looking at hardware and how a computer can transfer electricity into instructions for hardware. And if you think about it, everything we do, this communication we're having right now, the fact that you can hear my voice, the fact that you're getting a recording, is all a manipulation of electricity. If you unplug your computer, assuming you don't have a laptop, everything goes away. If you took the battery out of your laptop, everything goes away. Took the battery out of your phone. So how do you convert AC/DC electricity into something that's usable as a computer? That's what computer science answers. If I go back to the Tesla example in EVs, how do you get this big battery at the bottom of a car to show full self-driving on the screen? And when you get an input from an accelerator pedal, how do you make that signal go to these electric motors so they know how to turn faster and do whatever it is they do? That is absolutely computer engineering. What's cool about computer engineering is that it's also almost entirely inclusive of computer science. So programming, development, all the things that I mentioned before, we talked about full self-driving, that's machine learning. It's gathering up all the data from your cameras and learning from it. I have a lot more comments about that, but certainly it's computer science as well. So that's one of the big pros, is that if you do computer engineering, you can pivot to any of the jobs that are computer science based. And then you've got some exclusive ones. You want to work on processors for Dell, AMD, et cetera. There's no shortage of need for computer engineers. All the industrial jobs that were mentioned before, these jobs, we've got Volvo, BMW, Michelin all coming down, and they need all the robots on the lines to automate the processes, to build things. All of that is computer engineering at the end of the day. So there's so many options available in the state of South Carolina. But because it's inclusive of computer science, you're back to a heavy math focus. It's another mountain you have to climb if you want to go down this path. And I looked for associate's degrees, 2-year degrees that were parallel to this, and I didn't immediately find any in the schools that I know of in South Carolina. So I'm going to say that there's a high education requirement. You can get a 2-year degree and then transfer over to computer engineering, to a 4-year degree, but that's a high requirement. Cyber information security, getting a little closer to what it is I do on a day-to-day basis. Just cybersecurity. I think we call it cyber information security here at USC, but I think Coastal calls it cybersecurity. All the tech schools here that are listed call it cybersecurity. What you would be doing in this case is there's going to be events on the network, okay? So in the case of our network right now, there is somebody streaming TCP packets, maybe UDP packets, to the Zoom network and back. You may see these events and say that we have some issue with Zoom. We don't trust Zoom, whatever may be. Are you going to alert on those events? And then when you get the event and you get the alert, you've got to be able to look at it and analyze it and say, okay, user Galloway, which is me again, is using Zoom. Is that an expected outcome? Is that something we expect to happen here? And you say yes, then you don't worry about it. But if we don't expect that, if he's worked around the system somehow, then we may need to take action. There may be a threat actor or a bad actor in the system that's doing something that's an unexpected outcome. unexpected for them to be there, of course, but certainly they do something that leads to an unexpected outcome. You've got to be able to take action. You can do what's called penetration testing, which is kind of the opposite. You have to sort of play the bad guy, if you will. You've got to become the person that goes onto someone else's network with consent as a part of a business transaction, and you attempt to hack their network in order to show them where the flaws are. And then you can go back to them and say, hey, you need to turn this off, you need to turn this on, you need to patch this server because I was able to go boom, 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 and then I had the keys to your entire city. And security consultants can kind of fall in between, where we can sit down with someone and look at what you've got and say, hey, this needs to be fixed. If you don't resolve this, it could lead to X, Y, and Z. So you have to understand the system as a whole. All of these things are in demand everywhere. All those industrial jobs require cybersecurity. One of the things that we see frequently is that our enemies, and don't think that's just Russia and China. You've got kids sitting in their mother's basements in Minnesota attempting to cause chaos. And they're attempting to do things like shut down bridges. They're trying to shut down the power grid. They're trying to take over cameras, they have different motivations. They may want to ransomware a company to force them to pay a certain amount of money in Bitcoin to get their data back, or they may just want to take over somebody's Twitter account so they can put up bad words and bad themes just to embarrass someone. There's unlimited demand for cybersecurity, and you need to understand how systems work in order to make it happen. It's an analytical job. You've got to be able to think through the process. You got to not just think what could happen, but you've got to be able to stop and determine what did happen. On the con side of this, again, our enemies are not just Russia and China. It's somebody sitting in their drawers out in Portland, Oregon, and it's a 24/7 job. You've got to be able to protect services. Our enemies don't stop trying to attack us because it's Christmas. It's Christmas morning, we're opening gifts with our kids or anything like that. It's happening all the time. You've got to know the system. So even though you get a degree in this, you're not going to just get dropped in as a penetration tester. There's a certain degree of experience that's necessary. So it's going to come with getting a degree helps you get that job, but it may take time before that job kind of comes to fruition the way you think it's going to. And then resource constraints. Man, you could get $2, $3, $5 million, $10 million worth of protective equipment to have different layers of security. But what you'll find in the real world is that that's not always an option. So what you have to do in that case is you have to work with what you have and secure what you have the best you can. So again, that's also back to the experience thing, being able to just know what to do with what you have, as opposed to just feeling defeated because you can't get what you want. And the last one on my list is integrated information technology. This is for someone that may be in the position you're in, where I know I want to do IT, but I'm not sure exactly what. Nothing really speaks to me. I just know this is kind of sort of where I want to go. With this degree, you can theoretically do anything that we've mentioned. You don't necessarily need formal education to do it. If you want to buckle down and get your A+ certification from a company called CompTIA, you can get that. The certification, the book is $55 on Amazon. The certification attempt is $250, which in the IT world is cheap, nothing. All of my certifications are $8,000 a piece, so that's nothing. And you can get started with this. But one of the pros and cons here is that you've got to be a self-starter if you're going to do integrated information technology. And the reason is because you're going to learn a little bit about everything, but not a lot about anything, which makes you a mile wide and an inch deep. So if you're going to get into this, you've got to be ready to motivate yourself. And when you find something in the field that you want to get good at, you're going to have to be willing to really fight and get good at it on your own. Okay, so you'll know a little bit about networking, a little bit about programming, and then you say, whoa, I kind of like that programming thing. I like that Python stuff. What else can I do with that? And you're going to have to be opening up your computer and writing Python scripts and moving yourself forward in that regard. And then day in the life of a security engineer. So what I do is a little bit of everything. We get network events in all the time, and we have network equipment that reads events, copies the events over. We have tools that analyze the events. I work on those things. A lot of that is a little computer engineering, but some of what we talked about with IIT, Then we have to analyze the events. I do that. I look at the IP addresses, I look at the data, I look at the information, the types of attacks. That's analyst work, that's cyber information security. And after doing them manually enough times, I say, hey, I don't want to analyze it this way anymore. So I start writing scripts. I start writing code so that every time I see certain things, I can automatically take certain actions. And I write applications so everybody on the team can share in on this as well. And then in addition to that, soft skills. I have to communicate these things to people that don't know exactly what the details are, but I need to make sure they understand well enough for us to take action. So I have to report, I have to do incident handling and incident response. That's a lot of data. I hope there is something in the Q&A. I hope I got some likes and subscribes out of this. So I'm happy to answer any questions if there are some.
What tips can you recommend to stand out when competing for jobs in the tech industry?
Okay, the thing you want to stand out with is experience. So one of the things that I do here is I am the manager of students in all of these degrees as a part of the security office. And the thing that I have them do is not only get experience with me on their resume, but I make them go get summer internships at all those places you saw in the SC Tech presentation, so that when they go to those first jobs, those employers say, whoa, you've worked where? You've been working the entire time. You didn't just go to school and treat college like high school. You actually made an additional effort. Their resumes bubble to the top. All of my students thus far have graduated with six-figure jobs for that reason. So that is my hint to you, is you have to work at it and show that you're working at it through your educational journey.